I am Ann Cantrell with the GlobalAtlanta News Service, and today I'm with Janet Abraham, who is a Japanese interpreter. Thank you for coming in and talking with us.
My pleasure.
So, could you talk a little bit about how you became an interpreter and what was the process?
I kind of fell into it. I cheated in learning Japanese. I was a missionary's kid who was born in Japan.
Oh, okay.
And so I was surrounded by Japanese. All my playmates were neighborhood kids, and everything was in Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
So it was English in the home, Japanese outside of the home.
Okay.
And my mom started teaching me at home when I was in first grade, but one-on-one, I was a stubborn kid who didn't always want to do my assignments, and there was nobody else to interact with. So my parents took the plunge and put me in Japanese public schools when I was about third grade, midway. And so after kind of taking a little while to catch up, then I was just in Japanese public schools like a Japanese kid.
Oh, okay.
So through 8th grade, all my education was in Japanese, and then came back to the States and switched over to English medium schools in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But the Japanese was already a given and part of who I am. So I'm bilingual in Japanese and English.
So, did you have another career before being an interpreter, or is this something you've been doing all of your life?
In terms of career, this is pretty much what I've been doing. I was in graduate school studying Japanese art history. Just tumbled into that too. It was something I really loved and was studying, but when I was in the PhD program, started to wake up to the fact that it really wasn't very marketable. And what I found I could do was interpreting. It just kind of came naturally to me, partly because I was bilingual and bicultural.
Right.
So I started doing that on the side, and then eventually that became my career. The difficulties of interpreting, it's almost hard to know where to start. It starts from the very beginning. Every situation is new. Every person is new. I'm freelance, so I'm stepping into different. So, for example, we met when I was interpreting for a sushi chef. Well, I'm not much of a chef or a cook on my own, though I'm very good at eating. And I don't know the world of sushi. So studying is fun, but you never know what kind of curveballs are going to come at you. And also personalities are different. Some people are very easy to understand, easy to work with. Some people are harder to get to know, get a feel for, and again, I want to try to communicate their personality, their enthusiasm, their interests, their take on things. So it's like being on a new job every assignment, and that has a lot of intensity. And I've done everything from plasma physics to sushi chefs. So you're in very different fields, and that's what I really like. But I always feel like I'm just, if I'm lucky, just barely staying a step ahead of what's happening sometimes.
At the sushi demonstration, there was a moment where you said that there might be a word you don't know because if it's an exotic ingredient. Mm-hmm. Is that a problem of interpreting or a challenge that there are certain words in Japanese that just aren't as common in English?
It's a challenge. You just don't know. It was a different part of the sushi assignment, but someone in the audience asked, do you use kosher salt, for example? Mm-hmm. Well, kosher is not a concept that is even in Japan. Right. So you end up having to explain. It keeps me really humble because I'm a conduit. It's not about, even if I am embarrassed, if I don't know, often if I ask, people will jump in, or worst case, I'll have to explain, like kosher salt, I had to explain what kosher was and how that applied to it. So one word becomes two sentences.
Right.
And same thing can happen with ingredients as well. Even if I know a technical or a correct translation, that's not always the best way to communicate. For example, with the sushi chef, there's a leaf called shiso, which is commonly used in Japanese cooking, and people who know Japanese food would know it as shiso. The correct translation is beefsteak plant. But if you say that word to someone who doesn't know it, A, it doesn't mean anything, and just the word beefsteak as applied to a plant is actually confusing or complicating. So I might say Japanese basil, which is a word that is used at times, but it is more kind of explanatory, but it gets you in the right direction. So those are the kinds of things that you always have to think about on the fly. And sometimes it works, and sometimes you get it wrong, and you have to say, whoops, you know, or explain it again.
Do you typically work with political organizations, or do you work with corporations as well? What are some of the other?
I've been out of the field for a long time, but the fun and challenge of being freelance is it's all across the board. I've done various political assignments. Many of them were in New York City, and governor of Tokyo coming over to meet the mayor of New York kind of thing. But most assignments are business because there's a lot of business exchange. Right. And that can run the gamut too. It can be CEOs meeting to discuss a joint venture, or it could be someone who is on the floor of a plant, you know, because teaching how to use a Japanese piece of equipment to the local workers. It really runs the gamut. I enjoy the cultural exchanges the most, but those are few and far between.
Well, I think that's it. Thank you for coming in and talking with us.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.